Hello. I am jumping right in. I decided that I was going to kind of recap my pregnancy and then continue on from where I am now, weekly or daily or however. This is my fourth pregnancy and my third in the last year and a half. My first pregnancy was 6 years ago. And I have a beautiful, almost 6-year-old boy. As you may know, if you know me or see my channel or whatever. And then I have two angel babies and this pregnancy. So I got pregnant. I guess the beginning of my pregnancy was February 27th. And so I turn over on Thursdays. This was hard for me because I had just lost two children and I had a really hard time with the prospect of losing another one, and was it worth trying if I could lose it and those things. And so I spoke with my husband at the time and said, hey, I want to give this one more time, and if it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And that's it. Let's just call it good. And that's what we did. And I wound up pregnant. Big shocker. And I had a really hard first trimester because I was so scared. I was scared that I was going to lose the baby. I was scared that my body was just not ready or it wasn't going to do this again, I got in a car accident at about 3 weeks pregnant. I didn't know I was pregnant. And then that was like the day after St. Patrick's Day. So within a week, I got very sick. There was some virus going around in early March of this year, and it kicked my butt. I was in bed for almost 2 weeks. I was dehydrated. I couldn't eat or drink anything. I was so sick. It was the only time in my parenting career that I've ever been that sick, and it kept me away from my kid because, one, I couldn't function. I had to sleep. I had to lay down. Otherwise, I was throwing up or whatever. And two, I didn't want to get him sick. And so I finally knew I was dehydrated. I knew that I needed an IV because as much as I was trying to drink or, eat soup or whatever, I knew that it wasn't enough. And so I went into a walk-in clinic, and I was so nauseous. And so he walked in and he put these 2 dissolvable pills in my hand. He's like, put these under your tongue. And within like 20 minutes, I was able to hold a conversation, still horizontally, but I was able to actually hold a conversation. And my husband was there with me, and the doc came in and he checked me out, and he's like, yeah, you're sick as hell, and da-da-da-da. He's like, do you think you could be pregnant? And I'm like, well, no, because I took a pregnancy test and, it was negative. And he's like, but are you sure? And I'm like, when a doctor asks me if I'm sure, no, not so much. All of my sureness goes out the window. And he's like, well, we have to do a urine anyway, so let's just test you. I was like, whatever. I just don't feel good. I want to go home. So, I went and I peed in a cup for him, and I went back to my room and laid down, and my husband and I were talking, and the doctor comes in about like 15 or 20 minutes later, maybe not even that long, shuts the door, and he's looking at his papers, and he's like, guess who's pregnant? And I looked at him, and he's like, it's not me. And I looked at my husband, and he goes, it's not him either. And I'm like, me? It was a shock because I never thought it was going to happen again. I had just lost 2 babies. I'm way overweight to start with. I was like 215 or 220 or whatever when I got pregnant, and I'm only 5'7". I should not be weighing that much. Maybe 90 pounds less than that. And so it was emotional, and it was like, oh my God. And I was sick. So I was like, I'm going to throw up now. And so they drew blood and they wanted to do the quants and see what my levels were and see how pregnant I was and all that other happy stuff. And then they sent me home. The next day, my pulse, after laying in bed for 8 to 10 hours, my pulse was 140. And it was just going up. And I knew that I needed to go to the hospital. I needed an IV because my heart was pounding too hard, too fast, and it was just working too much. So we went to the emergency room, and they did another test, and they hooked me up to IVs, and then they wanted to do an ultrasound, and I'm like, I'm nowhere near pregnant enough for you to see anything. They're like, well, we want to see anyways. And of course, because their test showed that I was only 3 weeks or 4 weeks pregnant, and the ultrasound showed nothing, they're like, oh, well, we're concerned that this isn't a viable. And I'm like, really? You're going to put me through all this, sick as hell, when I'm telling you I'm not very pregnant. I just found out yesterday it was not a good way to start a pregnancy. That illness lasted another week, and the baby lasted 2. He's definitely my rainbow baby, rainbow after the storm. And I was on progesterone with him because they were concerned that the timing of the sperm meeting the egg was not right. And so my body shut off the availability of pregnancy hormones like within a day or two after conception. And so that's why I kept losing my babies, I guess, because my body does not like his body. Excuse me. So I was on progesterone for 12 and a half weeks. And at that point he cut me off. And I gotta say, that was my blanket, that was my security blanket. I was scared when he told me, my OB told me, okay, well, you need to stop. And I'm like, but I feel safer doing it. And he's like, it's not going to do you any good anymore. And I knew that I had to make it to 20 weeks before anybody could do anything to help if something was going wrong in the pregnancy. So my first trimester was stressful as all get out. I was so scared of losing the baby, and things were going very sideways. It was becoming very apparent that my husband and I's relationship was over. And I was trying to get my son, my oldest, has been having some issues, and so I've been trying to get that dealt with, and that's been a long time coming. And so my first trimester was uber exciting, very, very stressful. And when I hit 13 and a half or 14 weeks, or however my OB says first trimester is over, I was very grateful. And that's where I'm gonna go to next. So that was the exciting first trimester business, and I'll see you around.